of having to sign in to speak.
Thank you, Ms. Hamilton. Ms. Pizzo.
Laura Pizzo, 2265 Weir Road. You're going to have to forgive me this evening. I'm not a fan of the canned speech, but since it seems to be in vogue these days, you're going to have to forgive my lack of eye contact while I read my carefully prepared speech quickly. One thing I want to say before I start this is that the mileage I quote is from, it's not Googled or anything, it's just from my car, so take it for what it is. Last month, I voiced my concerns regarding the approval of Board Member Fiordamondo's request to have the district pay for her hotel stay in King of Prussia. Approximately 23 miles, maybe from where I stand right now. She was the sole board member attending the PSBA conference to make this request. I expressed my concern about the approval of this type of expense, as well as the forms used to authorize the release of these funds.
Ms. Pizzo, I think I know where you're going with your comment, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as I read earlier, I am not going to allow any direct...
I'm not going to be direct. I'm simply trying to answer what was alleged. She had her say. I think it's only fair to allow mine. And I promise you I will not cross the line.
I don't want to have this school board meeting to be used as a forum for attacks on board members.
It's okay to attack the public, though.
No, if there's an issue that you have with Ms. Fiordamondo, my suggestion would be that you would speak to her maybe after the meeting, and maybe you could resolve this.
Would you humor me? And if I cross the line, feel free to can me then. I've taken care.
You can rest assured.
Okay, I know that. Okay, all righty. Another resident dismissed my concern, saying that the amount was minimal in comparison to a variety of expenses that she detailed from the past. It's true. The amount I'm questioning is small. What this resident fails to understand is that it's the lax culture governing the use of taxpayer dollars that I'm questioning. Some people may have a threshold for the misuse of taxpayer dollars that they would tolerate. That is where I differ. I have a zero tolerance for the waste of our money. That resident stood this microphone and credited herself for heralding the cry for the forensic audit that now she calls in question, and who does it target? I guess my question would be, what is the cost if we don't do this audit? The expense information I received demonstrated that even with expenses of this small nature, the proper procedures didn't appear to have been followed. The residents of this district deserve to know how our money has been spent, and no board member or member of this administration is exempt for our scrutiny. The next statement says that the Board Member Fiordamondo did end last week's session with quite an attack on anonymous character. I can only assume that was in reference to my expense request that I made under my own name through the proper channels. I requested the expenses, I'm not going any further with that, for the entire board. And the first response I got was blank. So being used to sparring with this board, I reworded carefully, added every expense I could think under the sun, and got back only one. Understanding that I drive to King of Prussia every day, it struck me as excessive. And that's the reason that I stood at the microphone then. I'll be at the microphone next month. I have the right, in fact, the duty to question you and every other board member, as well as this administration. You are not above this type of scrutiny. You all. This is not directed to one. And I actually will believe that the reaction to the scrutiny is quite telling. I'm leaving out whole chunks. You should be so proud. My inquiry, through the proper channels, was characterized as an attack. I don't believe there's room for this, as you say, any kind of an attack or any arrogance. I simply made a request, and you can vouch for me on this, through the proper channels and under my own name. Skipping a whole nother paragraph. I put my concerns before the entire community to see, there's a couple of big websites in town. I won't name any. I was going to, but I won't. So it's not as if I've done this anonymously. And I am insulted. I am angered that although you see fit to limit what I am able to say at this microphone this evening, no such censoring took place from the woman that left. Oh, well, nope, she's still in the room, I'm glad. No such censoring took place, but I'm going to get past that. The outbreak, the part of that outburst, I will say the prepared outburst, that so upset me, and I'm going from the cuff now, so I plan not to do, was that the allegation was somewhat recklessly made that the person who is anonymously attacking this board member also vandalized their car. If this is the spirit of the interaction that I can expect, I personally do not feel that there's any room on this board for that. I've questioned all of you And it always never, I mean, I've always remained civil, but I've asked you some hard questions. Never once have I been accused of vandalism of any kind. It just kind of blew me away. I think the person in question was angry. And my concern is that, again, I cannot reiterate this strongly enough. I have the right and duty to my children and to myself and my pocketbook to sit here and question. And if every time I put in a request through the proper channel, following the instructions that you give me, I have to wonder if I'm going to be subject to an attack such of that nature. I think maybe before you start wondering how you're going to limit the way we can speak, you maybe limit the way certain board members choose fit to speak to members of the public. You guys work for me. I left out whole chunks. I'll send you the original version. It's not fair. It's simply not fair.
Thank you, Ms. Pizzo.
Something, understand I'm going to accuse you of something, and I'm almost kind of cool with that. If we're going to do the who's the biggest kid on the playground. If it's not, if it is an illogical assumption that an isolated incident 7 months ago is somehow corresponds with somebody making a legitimate right to know request, that's not just a leap of logic. That's tying a bungee cord around your legs and jumping off the cliff of logic. It makes no sense. Mr. Ruggieri, remember the first time we ever talked outside of this meeting, and I was writing emails like manifestos, and you were perfectly cool with me. Mrs. Robinson, Mrs. McGloin, I question her more often than that woman should be questioned, and she's never been anything but professional and nice to me, and I couldn't pick her car out of a lineup. It's ridiculous to assume that somebody's going to put their name and their face and their checkbook on the line to appease their curiosity, to find out what's going on this board, or to be diligent, because the last time we weren't, lots of bad stuff happened. Is the same person who would lay key to car, or knife to, I don't know, a tire, or bend her antenna, or whatever happened. It's unfair. And it makes me feel that every time I do request something, I stand here and ask a question, I question your decision or something you do, that any one of you can turn around and, just like Jenny Jacks, sit there and cry big salty tears about how somebody's treading on her flowers. It's not fair. It's an accusation that's out there at the end of the meeting and is baseless. To say one and the other are the same is ridiculous.